Ladies and gentlemen, we have with us today Stanley Wolczyk, who on this day is 96 years old, which means he is a nonagenarian. And he is still going strong. He has a rich history of military, educational experiences, and a person who still volunteers. So we'll begin, first of all, with Stanley's boyhood. And Stanley, will you give us a few minutes on your boyhood, your growing up years?
Glad to do it. Good morning, everybody. Years ago, kids didn't receive allowances. If you wanted to have extra money, you had to go out and earn it. Good example. I wanted to go to the cinema. The last chapter of one I've been watching for 14 weeks. But I didn't have any money. So I approached my mother. I said, "Ma, you know I've been a good kid all week. I deserve 5 cents. And you know what she said? "Son," she said, "you're supposed to be good for nothing." I love that one. Now, we were, of course, required. If you wanted to earn money, there were many ways, but you had to look for them. One of my most popular ones was chasing baseballs in the evening when the adults were playing softball at one of the parks. Now, the reason they were losing the balls is because the field was next to a ravine. The city built a 12-foot fence, but that wasn't enough. Before the game was over, the balls would come over the fence, and I would hustle to pick them up. Now, this is how they did it. Each team came with a ball. Now, these were just local street people playing. They loved baseball, so they'd come together every now and then to enjoy their game. They would each bring a ball. That was required. 10 feet of fencing wasn't enough. A foul ball would go over the left field. I would rush to find it because it was in a ravine. The game continued until they lost the second ball. And I got that one too. So the coaches would come over, or the managers, very nice fellas. They knew what I was doing. I was saving the game for these fellas. Physically, they would have to go home. I was bringing them all together without knowing it so they can enjoy a game of softball, socialize with each other, find new friends, learn to cuss new words. So we'd negotiate. I charged 10 cents for fouling a ball. So I found 2 balls, and these coaches, the players, were so grateful. They always gave me a 5-cent tip. So I would receive 25 cents. But the important part of this is the fellows returned to their game, and they had an opportunity to enjoy something they loved instead of going home. So I did more than just earn some money, but I never thought about that at that time. But that was a good idea.
Now, how old would you have been at that time?
Oh, I was 10, 12 years old.
10 or 12. And what city would that have been in?
That would be in Cleveland.
Cleveland, okay.
Another good method of acquiring some money. Every Saturday at the local church, I think it was a Greek Orthodox church, the groom was required to toss coins to the youngsters that were on the bottom of the steps before his wedding was physically sealed. I don't know how that works. That was none of my business. But these fellas would toss coins to us, and that was always good for 20, 25 cents. But you see, we always did something for them. If we were not there, he could not have completed his requirement, whatever it was. And I thought that was interesting, too.
So that was the way you earned money as a youngster.
Because there wasn't any allowances. I was in school at South High School, and I noticed that the youngsters that graduated, they weren't working. And I thought to myself, what's the point of finishing school? I was in my junior year, and President Roosevelt came up with a beautiful program called CCC, Civilian Conservation Corps. I thought, boy, that's right up my alley. So I signed up. The best thing I ever did, or up to that point. We went out in the fields every day doing something for the nation, building fire lanes. Our group planted 10,000 trees in 1 year. I was there a full year. They gave us clothing. They fed us. Now, when you were at camp, the Army took over. So you see, even the Army Reserve people were called into active duty to handle this type of job. They paid us $30 a month. Oh, that was a heck of a lot of money. But the only trouble was they only gave me $6. Mm-hmm.
The rest went to
your... It was
your...
enough to handle all month's needs. The $24 was sent home to help the families, to pay for the water bill, the gas bill, electric bill, and so forth. So it was a nice program. The $6 was sufficient to keep me in my needs for the 1 month. I stayed a whole month. Now, before I left, my mother said, son, you either use your head or use your back. After a year at the camp, I used my back very hard. So I decided to return to school. In the meanwhile, we moved from the east side to the west side. So I entered Lincoln High School. My grades in South High were terrible.
Your grades were?
The grades were miserable. But now I have a reason. Use your head, kid. So I applied myself. That's all it took. The principal would come around after each grading period and write the names on the board who had more A's, for example. My name was always on the board. The kids thought I was a brain. I wasn't a brain. I was the same kid I was a year previous. But I applied myself. Now, it's essential as we move along in this why this will come in handy. I also learned...
So the CCC actually changed your life, basically, or your attitude at least.
It had to, yes, it did, because I decided there was more to life than just horsing around.
Okay.
Settle down, learn something, and that's what they actually taught me. While I was there, I met a couple of fellows that were in a group called CMTC. The initials stand for Citizens Military Training Camps. And that appealed to me, too. I said, geez, that sounds like a good deal. So I applied. And by golly, it was a regular Army instruction. They took us to a regular Army base, if I remember, Fort Benjamin Harrison in Indiana. And the good part of it was they also put a group of officers on active duty. So this was the period where nobody was working. So this gave an opportunity for officers to perform some of their work. And they trained us as soldiers. I fired my first rifle when I was in that camp. Well, the program, if you wish, lasted for 4 years. And each year you were given additional requirements such as squad leader, platoon leader, and so on, just as you would if you were in the Army. It appealed to me, see. Now, after the 4th year, you had the opportunity to sign up for the reserves. And there was a purpose behind that. And I did sign up. Now you were put into a situation where you had to study in a classroom for 1 year. Every Saturday I reported studying tactics, for example, movements of troops and all that. I spent a whole year every Saturday studying, and if you passed all the grades and you were in the reserves and you finished your 4 years in the CMTC, the president awarded you a commission, 2nd lieutenant, infantry. Now, the Army had many officers, but they're all college people. I felt very good about this. I learned a commission outside of going to school, college. One fine day, I received a letter from the War Department. The War Department. We had in those days. I always wondered why we never had a peace department. The War Department. The letter stated, the language was very exciting. It said, would you like to go to the Philippine Islands for a 2-year extended duty as a 2nd lieutenant infantry?
Now, did you have a college degree by that time?
I did not have the college degree yet.
Okay.
That came later.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought, wow, I could leave the country. I've never been out of Ohio. I didn't even know where the Philippines were at that time. But you see, MacArthur was down there at that point. He knew what was going on.
World War II was going on.
Not yet.
Okay. World War II had not begun yet. Okay.
No, we're still on. Because the second letter I received, it was after Pearl.
Okay.
The day after Pearl. It was not polite. I was very disappointed. All it said was, report. You're in the Army, kid. So I reported at Fort Hays for the final type exam. And if you were passed, you were sent to Fort Benning, Georgia, the infantry school. So I spent 3 months reviewing. The M1 just came into being, and we had learned how to fire the M1 and so forth and so on.
Now, did you go in as a 2nd lieutenant?
I went in as a 2nd lieutenant.
Okay.
I'm a commissioned man now.
Okay. And then you are now, where did you went to Fort Benning, and where from there?
Fort Benning, we completed our service there, and they sent us for training new recruits, wherever that was.
You can't remember, okay.
I remember. But the second assignment was to California, a place called San Luis Obispo, was a big base there.
Okay.
The 7th Division was stationed there. And that was an active duty military group. Now, about the time I got there, things were happening in the world. The Germans were in North Africa fighting the British. And they weren't doing so well. So they asked Roosevelt for some help. So they decided to send General Patton, who was the only the only tank man we had at that time. But the problem was he never had any desert training, and he was going to be sent to the desert. So they sent them to our desert. And our desert is just as hot and just as unfriendly as any desert in the world.
So you mean in California?
Desert called Mojave Desert in California and Arizona.
Okay, yes.
They also sent the 7th Motorized Division, the one I was assigned to. Now, motorized indicated we had half-tracks. So we were sent there to train to chase Rommel. He was the German general that was chasing all those British all over those sand dunes. When it came time to go, when they need, when you're playing war, you need umpires to judge when two combatants are facing each other, who could win.
So this isn't the training sessions?
This was maneuvers.
Yeah.
A training session for all tank men and half-track people. That's what making out wars. So in order to have a successful conclusion to an activity, you need an umpire. Somehow I was assigned that particular job with 12 others. They sent us to school for a week to train the value of tanks against artillery and all that. They gave me a truck, a driver, 2 flagmen, and a green flag that I rode on my truck, which gave me permission to go anywhere. After all, I was an umpire. So I saw a column of tanks moving across the desert. I said to my driver, I said, attach yourself to that, and maybe they're going to war someplace, so I can do my job. So he got behind a tank, and we're driving. We drove all night. I was discouraged. I said I should have got an easier assignment. But anyway, morning came. I kept asking the driver, can you see? Oh, yeah, I can see. Morning came. There wasn't a single vehicle in front of us. What happened to all those tanks I was following? But behind me, I had 12 tanks. Uh-oh. Somebody's going to H for this. Those tanks should have been in some kind of a assignment, attacking somebody. I'm sure the general had plans for those 12, and they're sitting behind me. So that doesn't look too good. It didn't take long, though. In the desert, you can see dust for miles. And it's a vehicle coming at me. All the tanks were parked behind me, see? Oh, I had 12 tanks that didn't make it. And if it was just a Jeep coming, I figured, well, maybe it's just a captain, and he's not so experienced on raising cane. But it was a command car. That indicated it was at least a bird colonel in their experience, and boy, they can know how to raise cane. But this was a little bit funny. It had a flag on the bumper. I thought, geez, that looks funny. Finally got enough of an angle so I can see. It had 2 stars on it. Holy mackerel. Here comes the commanding general looking for his tank. Later on, I heard the gossip at his headquarters that someone stole 12 of your tanks. Well, you don't steal tanks from General Patton. He comes after you.
Was this Patton in the car?
It was the commanding general, Patton.
Oh, okay.
And if you've never seen him, he's a big man anyway. But when he got off that command car, I thought he was 8 feet tall. And he was wearing his pistols, and you know they're that long. Those pearl handled jobs. I thought he was going to shoot me. And what he said, when I was interviewed for this, no one believed me. It could not have been General Patton. He doesn't talk that way. It's not his character to talk as you're mentioning. And I said, I tell them like I see them, or as I hear them. This is what he said. Lieutenant, if you finish using my tanks, I'd like to have them back. No one believed that. Remember, this was before he had active duty fighting someplace, so he probably was still a gentleman. But that's what he said. And these fellas didn't believe me. It's not in character for him to talk that way. He's a blood and guts man, remember?
A little rougher, right?
He was physically he wasn't. Before each battle, he physically prayed on his knees.
Is that right?
So he's got to be rough to accomplish something, otherwise things won't get done.
Did he look like George C. Scott, who played the...
Yes, he sure did. And in weight, he was a big man. So when he played that, he kind of looked like him, actually.
Did you see the movie Patton?
I sure did.
Okay.
Now, after the maneuvers were over, Patton took his tanks, and there was a change in plans apparently because they didn't take our half-tracks. We did not go. Patton took all our equipment, all our vehicles, except one Jeep he gave us for our company commanders, got one Jeep. We became foot troops again. That's where we were originally. He left for Africa. We're back to training, marching up and down. Finally, it was apparently our time to go somewhere. We were sent to Fort Ord, which is called a staging area. Get you ready to go somewhere. Now, something happened which the country did not know. Of course, I didn't know it was part of the thing. The Japanese attempted to take over this country by way of Alaska. They sent a force of 30,000 troops to take over Dutch Harbor. Well, our Navy, Air Force spotted them and broke up the landing. But they were successful at taking over the island of Attu, A-T-T-U. I never heard of that one.
In the Aleutians.
It is the last island in the Aleutian chain, and also the island of Ziska. And that's what they saved us for, instead of going to Africa. So it was our turn to go. In the staging area, you fill in all your requirements, all your needs, everything you need was brought into the companies and so forth. So it was time to leave. They didn't even have a troop transport to deliver us. Can you imagine how poor we were? How are you going to go anywhere? What happened, of course, when the war began, many freighters got caught all over the world because the German subs were sinking anything that was floating. So they ended up docked all over the world. And we had many ships on the western coastline. So what did they do? Rent, borrow, assign a Danish ship as a troop transport. It was an old freighter. All they did was put bunks in the hold of the ship, 4 high. We're on our way. We're going to land on the island of Attu. I never heard of it. People today don't even know it, and there's been, we fought there. We made the landing.
So you went from California to Attu.
We stopped in an island along the Alaskan coastline to gather all our ships.
Okay.
After we got assembled, we headed for Attu, and we made the landing. Now, there was no one on the beach to detour us. They're all about a mile in the mountains. They knew we were going to go there. So it was easier to build defenses on a mountaintop than it is on a flat land. So after visiting 2-3 valleys with the group, with the Army group. We were given an assignment to take over a valley. So I was ahead of my group to see where they were going, what's available. In the movies, you know, the officer sends scouts out, and they will roam around and come back and tell him what's going on. Well, it doesn't work that way. When you're in a fighting zone, you better get out there and see what's going on. You know what you're looking for. Then you can make the proper distribution of troops. So as I was walking in the snow up this little mountain, I came across a wounded American soldier lying in the snow.
This is on that too now, or you?
We're on that too.
Okay.
I thought he was dead, but he stopped coughing, spitting blood all over his chest. And yet, the worst is yet to come for this young soldier. Loneliness will overcome him now. Loneliness at this point is worse than all his injuries. If only somehow we can do this, where his loved ones could hold his hand, his wife, his mother, his sweetheart. That soldier would probably die with a smile on his face. But there was no one there. This is a heck of a place to die. The place is deserted. Nobody lives there. So I reached over, I grasped his hand, and I gave it a squeeze to reassure him that he's not alone, and that help is on the way. The medics were assigned to our group because we were going in on an attack. A few moments later, he squeezed my hand to acknowledge that he knows that there's someone there. And I looked at that soldier lying in the snow, and he had tears in his eyes. He was crying. But they were not tears of pain. They were tears of joy. As those tears were pouring down his cheeks, mixing with the blood on his face. He was smiling at me. The most beautiful smile in the world. A sight to behold. Here's this soldier dying, and he's smiling at me. He squeezed my hand a second time, and then he died. Still holding my hand. He didn't want to go. His hand got limp. I lowered and placed it on his chest. His smile faded away because his heart's no longer beating. And the tears on his cheeks, they remained there. Those beautiful tears remained on his cheeks. A young American soldier just died for his country. And every year about this time, Veterans Day, I think about that soldier. For the past 70 years, he's still holding my hand. And the tears are still rolling. But they're usually on my cheeks.
Yeah.
Well, we continued this. I continued forward, and I was injured. I got involved in a firefight, and I was injured. Now, that's a different story entirely.
But you're going to talk about that injury, right?
Oh, well, it's exciting, too. I was injured, and the explanation will come later. You'll understand what's going on. Apparently was shocked for a short period, because when I awoke, I thought I did. I was rubbing my legs together. Why, I have no idea. And when you do that, you roll up your trousers, and it's snowing. My feet were cold. We got the wrong gear, as you all know. We got the wrong equipment. to do this fighting. My feet were frozen. Now my leg was getting cold. And I thought to myself, you know, dead people are cold all over. So I lowered my head and closed my eyes. I'm waiting to get cold all over. What a thing to be dreaming about. Well, I didn't die, apparently. Well, I don't know how this works, you know. I never died before. So soon I can feel warmth on my back. I thought, geez. And it felt nice. Oh, I said, every time I took a deep breath especially. Oh, did that feel good. And I thought to myself, I wonder where I'm at as I looked around. Maybe I'm in heaven. So I looked up. Snowing. I heard shooting. I said, it couldn't be heaven. I don't think it's supposed to be that way. Then I thought about the other place. It's supposed to be hot all the time. Oh. And my back is warm. I thought, but surely I must be going there, wherever that is. And I thought, how in the world am I getting there? And I kind of looked up. I thought maybe I was flying. I wasn't too sure. But I couldn't figure this out. Why am I warm and I must be going someplace? Then it dawned on me. You were shot, remember? You were hitting the left shoulder blade. And when you're taking those nice deep breaths, what you're doing is pumping that nice warm blood from your body onto my back. No wonder it's warm. Now what do? There's no one around. What would you do? The only thing I could think of at that time was stop breathing. You won't pump so much blood out. So I did that. Well, how long can you last? 1 minute? I had to breathe then. But I started breathing very slowly because I knew how much blood I had left. I had no idea. We should have gauges on our wrists so we know how much we got left. Then I decided, well, apparently I'm alive. I better get at my pills. Now, the Army was very strict about that. If you get injured, be sure you take your pills, whatever they were. Each soldier was issued a packet of pills, and I had them placed on the back of my cartridge belt because you don't need them. You need your front for cartridges. But now I needed them. So it's a simple job to remove the cartridge belt. You just hold it one hand and raise your hand, and it comes off. I must have done it 1,000,000 times. But I couldn't do it. What do you mean I can't do it? I couldn't do it. Again, I thought to myself, I wonder where I'm at, that I can't do this simple operation. I did it in my sleep, I remember once. Then I observed my left hand arm didn't want to do anything. It just hung there. Oh, geez. Another part of me doesn't work. I wonder how many parts I got left before I'm dead. I thought to myself, I can't get my pills. I might as well lower my head, close my eyes, so I look nice for the medics that picked me up. Well, it didn't last long because I heard some soldiers coming. My soldiers came from my platoon. They removed the belt and gave me 2 pills. I popped them in my mouth. I couldn't swallow them. All I did was spit blood. I said, geez, another part of me is falling apart. I wonder how many parts I got left before I'm dead. Well, they wouldn't leave me, of course. They carried me back to the medics that were behind. They put me on a stretcher, and I don't remember what the medics did. They must have done something. Then they carried me back even further to where there was a bulldozer with a sled. They had 2 soldiers on it, 2 wounded soldiers, and they put me on this to deliver me back to the hospital. They established on the beach. They just placed the stretcher on it. And this was not Highway 101. This was up and down the mountain. And I thought to myself, you know, we're not going to make it. Sure enough, 2 of us slid off. Here I am, lying in the mud, kicked up by the track. I'm bloody all over. I'm hurting all over. And I'm muddied all over. I thought to myself, you know, if I hang around here long enough, somebody's going to kill me yet. So he had a helper. They put me back on the sled, and they delivered us to the hospital. They put us in a tent, wind blowing, knocking them down regularly. There were 2 or 3 soldiers, wounded soldiers, waiting for the doctor. Now, when you are fighting, you miss 2 things. One is food. You forget to eat. I haven't eaten for 3 days. You send me out to fight, they don't feed me. And you forget to go to the bathroom. I'm lying there. I had to go pee. I'm killing myself. So I asked the aide there that said, how about a urinal? I got to go there. So he brought it. Now you can imagine, you fellas, I'm wearing long johns, OD pants, and I'm wearing a rain trouser that they issued after we arrived. And it's cold out there. You know what that does to your body? And remember, my left arm was not functioning. It was still just hanging there. So I'm fishing around with my one right hand. I had trouble finding it. I still don't know how that actually ended up. Oh, the problems you get over nothing. Finally, it was my turn. The doctors took me in and checked me out. If they can return you to duty in 3 days, they would keep you. They had a little hospital built, a little tent. But if they couldn't, they put you aboard ship and send you back home. Well, they couldn't figure what was wrong with me, so they sent me aboard ship, and we ended up traveling back home. Now, while I was aboard the ship, I was in a compartment with probably 4 other patients, and it was warm. Boy, it must have been 90 degrees. So one of the sailors came over. He said, how'd you guys like some ice cream? Shoot, I haven't eaten for 3 days. I love some ice cream. The temperature is 90 degrees in here. I'm only in my shorts. So he brought the ice cream, a bowl. It must have been a quart. I took a dip with a spoon, you know, put it in my mouth. I thought, remember, I had trouble swallowing. I thought, geez, I wonder if I can do this. So I put the ice cream. I swallowed it. Wow. First food I had for 3 days. I ate the whole thing. By then it was melted down to almost nothing. But I enjoyed it. I arrived at Letterman General Hospital. It's a big, in San Francisco, it's the biggest hospital in the country, I guess. I was there for 2 days. I didn't know exactly where they were pushing me around. But another hospital ship came in from the South Pacific with another 400 or 500 patients. So they decided to send the Aleutian patients into the States someplace so they could handle them. They put us on a train. 280 patients, I think, with all the doctors and nurses. But I don't remember anything about that trip. 2 days later, we arrived in the town of Temple, Texas. There was a hospital there named McCloskey General, named after a Civil War general or somebody. And that's the first time I found out what was wrong with me. They really gave me a checkup. And this is what happened. First, you won't believe it. It's too far-fetched. But when you're in the Army, things like that happen all the time. Strange things happen. Hard to believe things happening. The bullet hit me in the left scapula, which is the left shoulder blade. It entered my spinal cord, injuring the 4th, 5th, and 6th cervical vertebra. I should have been paralyzed, they told me. In the process, it cut the nerve off my left arm. Now we know why my arm wasn't functioning. And then the bullet entered my throat, my mouth. That was the reason for the blood. And then I swallowed the bullet. The president said, bite the bullet, and I don't think he said swallow it. But anyway, first thing the kids, when I give this little story, they ask, did you save it? No, I didn't save it. If I had known my circumstances, I may have made plans for it, but I didn't know what was going on. Now that they knew what was wrong with me, now what are we going to do about it? Well, they had two choices. One, for me to wear a body cast from my chin all the way down my ankles, and I'd have to wear that for 6 months. I call it wearing, but I thought about that. Geez, how do I get in the bathroom with that dumb thing on? But they selected another method called Crutchfield traction, invented by a naval commander, a doctor called Crutchfield. And this is what they did. Oh, you love this too? Somebody's going to kill me yet. A fella came over, shaved my head. Then here comes two fellas with tools. I thought they were going to repair the screen that kept falling off. Heck no, they were my doctors in my own bed. They didn't take me to an operating room. They measured my head with some calipers, you know, they measure, and they had a ruler and they made marks on my head. What are you guys doing up there? They gave me a local on my head. Of course, they told me what they were doing, but I didn't believe them. Then he pulls out a drill. One of those old-fashioned, we used to call them egg beater drills.
Do it by hand.
By hand. And he's drilling my head. I knew it. I said, they're going to kill me yet. He drilled a hole on both sides. I still have scars. Then they had an instrument that looked like a pair of ice stones. They stuck them in my two holes that they made in a system of rollers and weights. So they had pulling my head, straightening my arm. The job was to straighten up my three vertebrae that were jammed together. They were jammed together and they got him to separate them. That was the purpose of that. So here I am with spikes in my head for 30 days. One fine day, well, this lasted 30 days. After 30 days, I got up. They made a brace for me so I can physically move about. And a month, 2 months later, they discharged me. I couldn't do infantry duty, so they just discharged me. So I came home, returned to my former job in a tank plant. And the war was over. I decided that's enough of that. Go back to school. So I registered at Baldwin Wallace College.
So, but in the injury, you swallowed the bullet, which injured your arm and which entered your throat.
And injured my 4th, 5th, and 6th cervical.
Okay, so it ricocheted all the way through there into your throat somehow.
And I know I didn't save it, so I don't know. It's probably in the Bering Sea.
Bering Sea.
Salmon probably ate it.
But you survived that ordeal.
And I survived it. Why? The good Lord was waiting for me.
And you were about what age at that time?
26.
26, okay. And you're now 96.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
So you've got 70 years yet of history after your World War II experience. So
no wonder I talk so much.
So your life is just about a quarter over when you were that age.
Well, you see, the good Lord upstairs, he says, I don't want that guy up here. He's too noisy. Keep him down here. So I returned to Baldwin Wallace. Now, the registrar invited me over, called me. He says, we got a little problem here. He got my records from school, and they were terrible.
From high school?
High school records.
Yes.
And I said, I know they're terrible. I said, why don't you do me a favor? Why don't you pull out only the senior grades? Pull one out.
We're at Lincoln. Senior.
Yeah, I was at Lincoln then.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
So he pulled out the senior grades only. Turned out to be 4 points.
Okay.
You're in. So I got in. Finished my school as a teacher. Got a job in Grafton Farmer School. I love that school. They taught me everything. Instead of in school, I learned it all there. And then I ended up in Garfield Park School.
So now he has transferred now from the military to education.
I'm in school business.
Yes, you're now in school business, okay. And you began your teaching career at, did you say Grafton?
Grafton Schools in Lorraine County.
Okay.
And then in Cleveland, Garfield Park Schools.
And then?
And then I met a buddy of mine, fraternity brother in Cleveland. What are you doing? He says, I'm teaching in Europe. Wow, I got excited. Tell me all about it. Hey, you're lucky, they're hiring. There's a hiring team in Cleveland. I went over there, they hired me to go to Europe. I came home to my darling wife, and I said, wifey, well, she'd kill me if she said that. She said, I told her, I said, sell the house, sell the car, sell the furniture, sell the kids, but nobody wanted to buy it. Prepared to go to Europe. And we did. I stayed for 2 weeks to get ready. She did all the work. And I finally got housing in Germany, and they finally came on Thanksgiving.
So how many years did you teach in Europe?
6 years.
6 years there. And while you were there, you met Elvis Presley. Is that correct?
Elvis, yes. I'm glad you mentioned that. Elvis, battalion head, he was a truck driver, by the way.
Yeah, okay, in the Army at that time.
He was an Army private. He was a private truck driver.
He was a singing truck driver, maybe.
Yeah. Well, I spotted him coming into the school was situated in an Army base, the soldiers all around. And his battalion headquarters was in that same base, so he'd come in to check or whatever he was doing. So one day, he's passing by, I hailed him, hey, why don't you come over and sing to our group?
Because he was a noted personality when he
Everybody knew him.
Yes, okay.
Everybody knew him. So he said, check with my battalion commander, I'm sure it's okay. I checked, I knew him. He came over, sang. Kids went crazy. I had up in the 9th grade that year. The exciting part was he did with the kids. What is that game? They string a rope across and you scooch underneath. Is there a name for that?
Limbo? Or?
Limbo.
Yeah, okay.
He beat all the girls in limbo.
Oh, was that right?
Yeah, that was that high, I think, and he was still scooching under there. Can you imagine that?
And he would have been what? In his 20s then?
Yeah, whatever he was, he did the job.
Yes, okay.
The kids loved him. He signed everything under the sun. Oh, yeah, I'm glad you reminded me of him. We got out of the Army. It was time to come home. My son graduated from Stuttgart.
No, okay, so now your teaching experience in Europe was in the military schools, meaning the schools of the Americans who were there?
The dependent schools.
Okay.
It was operated by DOD, which is Department of Defense
It
School.
was not in the German school?
Oh, no.
Okay, yes,
These were
okay.
all American kids.
Yes.
The schedules were the same as ours here.
Okay.
So my son graduated, and I thought, well, he joined the Navy, but my daughter, I thought, well, geez, I don't know if she could handle that Stuttgart thing. I'd rather have her graduate locally so she can have a reunion. So she graduated from Wadsworth.
Okay, so she graduated from Wadsworth.
So I got the job in Norton. But I couldn't find a place to stay, so I kept spreading out, and I ended up in Wadsworth. I'm glad I did. While I was in the school, the name of the school was Grill, the best school in that whole area. They're the best school in the whole county.
Maybe in the whole world, right?
Right now they are. They are the best teachers and the best parents. I had the best parents in the whole country. They made me a quilt when I left. Can you imagine that?
Made you what?
A quilt.
Oh, a quilt.
All the activities we did.
Oh, okay.
Next time maybe we'll bring an outstanding bunch of parents. And that's where I won the, what is this? Oh, the Educators Award.
Okay.
From the Freedom Foundation. And
you have that letter with you?
yes.
Yeah, he was, in 1981, Stanley was given an award by the Freedoms Foundation, and this is what it says. He was principal at Grill Elementary at that time in the Norton school system. It says, the trustees and officers of Freedom Foundation at Valley Forge announce with pleasure the selection of Stanley J. Wolczyk by the Distinguished National and School Awards Jury to receive the American Educator Medal Award for an outstanding accomplishment in helping to achieve a better understanding of the American way of life, signed by Robert W. Miller, President. And it goes on to say, who determines the awards and how? A national awards jury composed of state Supreme Court justices, national officers of patriotic, civic, service, and veterans organizations, representatives from industry, labor and government, and heads of educational institutions and associations is convened each year. No state or organization is represented in successive years. The group is divided into panels to judge individual categories. Each juror votes independently. Judging takes place during the week before Thanksgiving, and announcements will be made on George Washington's birthday, February the 22nd, 1981. And it goes on to say Mr. Wolczyk is the only Ohio recipient to receive this honor in 1981.
Hooray.
Of many who were nominated across the entire country. So now we don't have very much time right now, but we'll go to this later. But what were you doing at that time which caused them to believe that you were promoting civic education?
I should have brought my quilt here. all the squares indicate.
We'll do that next time.
Oh, next time I'll
Yes.
explain everything.
Yes, okay. But what were you doing? You were also a lecturer or talking to groups, were you not?
Anybody needed anything, they would call on me.
Okay, so you were a well sought after speech maker.
I love to do it.
You love to do it.
Why? Because I was a freebie.
Well, that's all right, but you love to do it.
I love to do it.
And that is the medal that you were given in 1981, which you just showed us.
I'm proud of it.
Yeah, you're proud of it.
I better mention this one. This is the Veterans Hall of Fame. And I'm proud of this one, too. I was awarded, I better read it, when you're 95. No, I'm 96.
96 now, yes.
And in 95, speaking of 1995, I was inducted into the Veterans Hall of Fame
Okay.
in Columbus. That's a very exciting thing to do, too.
Okay, we'll talk about that a little later, but the next time that we see Stanley, we will be talking more about his educational experience, also his retirement years, because he has been very active in his retirement years, and also the reasons he gives for his longevity, because most do not attain the age of 96. As you know, 96, when you enter the 90s, you are known as a nonagenarian. That is someone who is in their 90s. So he skipped the octogenarian, right, and went to the nonagenarian. So the next time we see Stanley, we will have more of his rich and exciting life that he has lived, and being 96, that is an accomplishment all its own. Thank you, Stanley, for being here today, and we will see you at a later time.
I hope so. I love being here. Thank you for inviting me.